Carol Massar, not quite the barn burner of a day that we saw yesterday, but according to glass half full Alex Steele, she'll take it up 0.1% on the S&P.
It is a little bit of, it feels like, investors trying to be bullish in this environment, but I feel like this is more of the trade we've seen as of late. But, we'll see. Consumer sentiment was a bit of a bummer here, and so sentiment can turn into reality, and I think that continues to freak out investors a bit.
Well, if yesterday was all about conviction, today is all about searching for direction. The S&P 500 moving between gains and losses today, many times. By my count, about 20 times, Scarlett.
Yeah, well, you can't really count on the U.S. market to rise every day the way you could last year. In the meantime, you look at European stocks up 1%. Jimmy Chang was just on, and he was telling us from Rockefeller Family Global Office that we're still, at least for foreign investors, in the early stages of reallocation to other markets like Europe, like Asia.
I will point out that we're still up for 3 straight days for the S&P. This is the glass half full part. We haven't seen that since February. I appreciate the gain is pretty sad. But, can we actually build on that is really the question if we do close a little bit higher.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, too. Basically, about half the stocks in the S&P up, half down, but some big names like Tesla moving higher. Mobileye, one of the big gainers on the day as well. We should point out a modest bid coming back into bonds, which is pushing yields lower. The VIX continues to drift lower as well. And the dollar, we'll just call that unchanged on the day. The Bloomberg Dollar Index down about 0.1%. The Dixie down a little bit less than that. We get the closing bells here in New York. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be green across the screen, at least for the 3 major averages here. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to finish the day higher. Well, it's only up about 12 points here. We have to wait for it to settle on a percentage basis. Now only up 4 points here. We're just going to call that unchanged on the day. The S&P 500, this is easier to do, up 9 points or about 0.2% on the day. The Nasdaq Composite up 83 points on the day, or about 0.5%. But here's your glass half empty scenario. Dow Transport's down 0.8%. S&P 400 mid-caps down 0.3%. And the Russell 2000 losing 14 points or 0.7%.
All right, I'm going to go back to something, Romaine, that you pointed out, that if you look inside the S&P 500, it's kind of an even split, a little bit more to the downside. You've got 218 names actually gaining ground in the S&P 500. Scarlett, 282 to the downside, 3 unchanged.
Can you name them all?
No. Not now.
Well, let's name 11 of them. How about that? Let's look at the 11 sectors in the S&P 500, and more green than red. Communication services, the best performers, up 1.4%. Some of those broadcasters like Fox leading the advance there. Consumer discretionary also gaining by 1%. And financials in the green as well. Interestingly, utilities are the worst performers, down 1.6%. Over the past year, they and financials are tied for the best performance, up about 21%. Of course, the excitement over the build out of data centers is certainly waning in the early months of 2025.
All right, guys, let's get to some of the individual gainers. CrowdStrike on that list. We saw that an outperformer in both the S&P and the Nasdaq 100. BTIG upgrading the stock to buy from neutral, citing the growth potential of the company, saying with the July IT outage now in the rearview mirror, we think CrowdStrike has much better visibility on forecasts, according to the analyst Gray Powell, who wrote and put out the note, setting a price target at $431 a share, stock closing at $384 and change, almost $385 to be more specific. So we're looking at a little bit of upside from today. Again, CrowdStrike up about 3.3%. Carvana, an outperformer today at its highs, up almost 6%, finishing the day with about a 3.7% gain. Morgan Stanley raised the company to overweight, saying the pullback in shares creates an attractive entry point. Keep in mind, we had seen the stock down about 25% from a peak in February through the last close amid a broader market slump. They set a price target to $280 from $260, and Carvana closing at $221.66 a share. And then just throwing this one out, Trump Media and Technology finishing up almost 9% in today's session. The company, of course, home to the president's social media site, jumping after signing a non-binding agreement to partner with Crypto.com for a series of ETFs through its Truth.fi brand. Am I saying that right? I don't know. Stock is down more than 30% year to date. 11% of the float shorted.
This is your stock.
Stock is down about 76% from the March 2022 high. All right, I'm passing the baton real quickly.
All right, I'll take the baton, and I'll talk about UPS. Shares down today by just over 5%. They fell the most intraday going back to February. Bank of America analyst Ken Hexter now expects the delivery company's first quarter EPS to fall meaningfully short of the consensus estimates. Those earnings come out next month, April 29th, mark your calendars, shares are still down about 45% since those 2022 highs. Once again, UPS down 5% today. Also, taking a look at shares of fertilizer stocks today, they fell as U.S. and Russia restored market exports. CF Industries is the world's largest producer of nitrogen fertilizer. It fell today by 2.3%. It dropped at one point today to the lowest in 8 months. A suspension of hostilities in the Black Sea region, which is a critical trading route for fertilizer, grain, and other farm products, is expected to loosen up supplies from the region and ease volatility. Once again, shares down a little more than 2%. And finally, Lumen Technologies, not to be confused with Lumen from Severance fans. Any Severance fans here?
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
did you see, Tim? We had a waffle party upstairs.
Did you?
This
I
morning.
saw that today.
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
I don't know if that was like tongue in cheek or if they knew what they were doing.
You know, I'm a little behind, so I'm only up to the melon party at this point.
Oh, once you get to the waffle party.
Yeah. So I
Guys,
guess
spoilers,
something else.
spoilers.
I have that to look forward to. Shares fell 9.5%, despite the fact that we're watching some M&A news. Bloomberg News reported that AT&T is in talks to acquire Lumen's consumer fiber operations, a transaction value of over $5.5 billion. This is according to people familiar with the matter. Shares spiked higher after that, but then fell at the end of the day by more than 9%.
All right, we are actually getting earnings now. This actually out of GameStop. Net sales in the most recent quarter down 1.283 billion. That's compared to 1.794 billion in the year ago quarter. Here, adjusted EBITDA in the quarter, $96.5 million for the fourth quarter. That compares to about 88 million in the prior quarter. There's not really estimates to compare to because no one really covers this company in that type of depth here. But overall, those are your two headline numbers. You're seeing a modest move in the shares, up about 2%. We'll dive a little bit deeper into the release and see if there's anything meaningful in there about this company's future. But I should point out, as with most of its releases, it is incredibly brief.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of skimmed the release. I didn't really find much. Okay, I'm going to the bond market, guys. So buying across the curve, pretty much. You had a 2-year auction that went really well today. There was very strong demand. And then tomorrow, you get the 5-year and then the 7-year on Thursday. So we're going to be watching for that. We're looking at about $70 billion in 5-year notes coming tomorrow. It looks like the takedown's doing pretty well, especially if you have 2-year yields right around 4%. You're clearly going to have some buyers stepping in there, guys.
All right, guys, I don't know how many times your bosses come around and say, hey, what did you do last week? But if you work for the federal government, you certainly get that from Elon Musk, of course, who is running Doge. And apparently the email and the inbox at the government got a bit clogged up.
It's full. So workers who've been submitting their list, which is part of the Doge effort to cut the federal budget and downsize the federal workforce, they're getting bounce back emails that are telling them that their message weren't delivered. Here's what they say. The recipient's mailbox is full and can't accept messages now. Please try resending your message later or contact the recipient directly. What are you supposed to do now?
Sounds a little inefficient to me.
Are you supposed to just get in touch with him on X and tell him this is what you
NASA created an app for workers to use to send their reports instead of messaging the Office of Personnel Management, and they called it a secure internal tool. So
is it called Signal?
Too soon.
Too soon.
Burn.
Too
Way
soon.
too soon.
I had a feeling that was going to come up. Yeah.
Sorry.
They're still trying to clean that whole situation up and answer the questions that have been raised. What about the other story, which is folks in Canada are loading up buying this mega pack of beer, 1,461 cans of Moosehead beer. It's called the presidential pack because it's one for each day of Trump's presidency.
I love this. It's like $2,200 or something to buy it. Of course, the first thing I said was like, where do you store all of that? But I thought it's definitely a marketing gimmick, but people may be buying it.
It's all about buying Canada and not buying American products like American beer.
Yeah.
And also to survive through the presidency, I feel like I'm reading between the tea leaves on that one.
For Canadians, yes.
For Canadians.
Yeah, interesting.
I've never had Moosehead beer, by the way.
No, it's so good.
No.
You've had it?
I've never had it.
Someday, sure. Who hasn't?
This cannot be shipped to the U.S., by the way. This can only be shipped to 3 different Canadian provinces.
Which makes sense.
Just 3 different which provinces don't get it. Just
New
real quickly,
Brunswick,
guys, I do want to go
Ontario.
back to GameStop for 1 second. The shares now are starting to take off just a little bit. The company, this will be music to your ears, Tim Stenovic, has now updated its investment policy statement to add Bitcoin as an asset. It says it's going to add Bitcoin as a Treasury reserve asset. Doesn't exactly say by how much or when, but the share is getting a little bit of a pop off of it.
We're doing this again?
Again, apparently.
Okay.
Maybe they'll be like MicroStrategy, turn yourself from a software company to a crypto hedge fund. Or what? Well, who knows? Who cares? But look, GameStop, are you buying games anymore?
No.
I'm not sure what anyone's buying there.
Okay, but you're buying crypto, right?
I'm not buying crypto.
He's totally buying crypto.
No, collectibles. They're buying collectibles
Moosehead,
there.
right?
He's
Something.
with
You buying
crypto,
anything?
With crypto. There we go.
I'm buying time.
Can you spend? Help this economy out, Tim?
He can't.
More
He's too
likely
liquid.
to buy Moosehead beer.
Moosehead beer.
Oh, Morse.
What did you say? Morse head? like Norse? Like the god? Wow. Okay.
There's a big moose on the crate, Carol.
That is
Carol's
a total
already
wrap.
started drinking again.
I know.
All right.
If it's only Tuesday. Oh, it is only Tuesday. All right, guys, that is a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals, we do it all. I know Alex is heading out, but of course, Romaine and Scarlett finishing up on TV, and Tim and I continuing without Moosehead beer here on Business Week. We'll see you tomorrow.